What is going on, everyone? Anthony here, and in this video we are going to talk about gaming. Just gaming in general. Now, I know it's a little bit different than what I normally talk about, but I think this is something we can all relate to. So I think this is a video that does make sense to post on this channel just because it is all very much relatable, and I know it's been covered a lot by various gaming YouTubers and channels and podcasts and just discussions. So it's not like I'm bringing anything new to this discussion, but I wanted to just share my opinion and thoughts, and maybe you feel the same way as well. And that's just the idea of gaming in general, where it is nowadays, how greedy these companies have become, where has their mindset gone as far as just simply milking the customer for all they're worth with microtransactions and unfinished games and all that stuff. So let's dive a little bit further into where I'm getting at with this. So I know there's been recent talks of, Nintendo and their pricing, and even like Rockstar with their pricing of GTA. That's not really what this video is about or where it stemmed from, but it definitely didn't help matters when I thought about it, and it made me want to make the video even more, and on just kind of like a general statement. So this isn't a, F you to any company. I am wearing a PlayStation 1 shirt, but I buy every single console. I was never just on one machine. I always played everything. So let's not get that twisted. I grew up in the late 90s. I was very young. But in the early 2000s was when I really started to have my gaming journey, And PS1, for me, was my gateway. That's what my dad played, and that's what was around, right? My brother and my dad played all those games. My cousins, like everyone was on PS1 at that time. And N64 as well. I got that a few years later. But the PS1 was the entry point for me. Obviously, Resident Evil, Siphon Filter, Twisted Metal, Spyro, Crash Bandicoot. The list goes on. So many amazing titles that I can't even begin to tell you how many hours I put into all of these games, and just constantly playing with friends, hooking up the multi-tab, playing Crash Team Racing, getting all the game magazines and reading the reviews, getting the demos, the PS1 demos. I'm a huge PS1 demo collector as well. It was just a special time for me to find out what gaming is, find out how to use a controller, learn how to play with a controller, from just watching and observing to finally playing it in my hands. That was really that entry point, was PlayStation 1 for me. Now, I'm younger, so some of you are like, oh, dude, you're young as shit, you know what I mean? Because I grew up with NES and, Sega Genesis or whatever, and I get that. And thankfully, my dad was playing all that stuff, so he had all that stuff in the attic. He would bring it down and show us how the older games was. Anything from the Atari, because he had the Atari, he had NES, he had the Sega Genesis, so we were able to appreciate the older games as well, even being younger and seeing, wow, these games, came out way before we were even born, and it was like a really cool thing, right? So there is a variation of consoles that we were getting into, and that just shows you that, like, I just like to play everything, right? But the games at the time were very fresh, very original. That takes us to the next gen. Dreamcast was also something we played a fuck ton of back in the day, just before the PS2 came out, the GameCube, the Xbox, which we also all had. And I still consider that generation, that era of gaming, to be one of the best ever, because we were just getting consoles that, some ran better than others, but it was games that really respected the buyer and the customer, that were really finished, that were polished. You couldn't just update it and fix it later. You couldn't add microtransactions to, squeeze every last dollar out of your customer. It was a full, complete game. The stories were refreshing. The games didn't take 10 years to start up, as far as playing an intro that lasts 3 hours long and you just want to get to the damn game. Some games were just, they really were more punchy and more innovative within that space. Now, I know after a while, a lot of developers and franchises kind of hit a wall, because when you have a successful franchise and you don't want to let go of that individual IP, sometimes you hit a bunch of walls and you hit a, kind of stagnant point where it's not as impactful anymore. And so after this generation that I'm talking about, where I was, playing all these games and going over friends' houses, going to the video store to rent titles. That was a big thing because we couldn't afford games all the time in my house. So rentals. You know, I didn't go to Blockbuster because my parents thought they were too expensive. So we went to a mom and pop video store that was in my local area called Hometown Video. It was right around South Jersey. And that is exactly what we did. As far as, you know, VHS and movie rentals, as you can see behind me, I got several movies behind me and games. But not only along with the VHS rentals and the early DVD rentals that you know, use your PS2 to, you know, play the DVDs on, I would be renting games and constantly trying out games. And it always seemed like there was something new out. There was always multiple games coming out. And I know back then the technology was a little bit different. It was a little bit more simple, more basic. It was easier to get games, you know, done in a particular time. Now, back then, games still got delayed, but the developers did what they had to get that thing across the finish line. They weren't, you know, whining and complaining online. And I'm not saying that there can't be toxic work environments and stuff like that. I'm not trying to be ignorant to that. But there's certain developers that just do what they have to do, even though it sucks. And they work the overtime hours, right? It's just like your job. Like, if you get asked by your job, hey, you're going to have to work overtime, you're going to be like, okay, like, I guess I just have to work overtime. You could say no, sure, but they're just going to give those hours to somebody else, right? So it's just like, that mindset of like, oh, we can't be working longer than X. Like, I understand that it's a big problem in the industry, and all of these gaming developers such as Naughty Dog have to be like very apologetic and say they're sorry and stuff like that. You can't just water it down to say, oh, like, we're being, you know, crunched. We don't like this. And then when the game comes out, it's broken and it's shitty. And it can't just be like, well, because, you know, the lead developer or the lead designer is like, you know, pushing this, you know, crappy, you know, work environment on these workers to make this game, and that's why it didn't come out good. No, they're taking your money. They're taking your hard-earned $70, soon to be $80, maybe even more with GTA 6, and they're just, you know, spitting in your face, basically. And I think that's where I draw the line, where, you know, a lot of these games that we get nowadays were just, again, just a mere shadow of what it used to be when you used to get games. And even when you talk about the 360 and the PS3 era, which, again, the 360 was my gateway into Xbox Live to playing online, and I liked both of those consoles, but the 360 was where all my friends were at, where all the games were at for online. And you're talking Halo 3, Gears of War 1, Call of Duty 2. Like, these were like the early days of, for me, going online playing these games. The first one was Call of Duty 2 and Gears 1, and then that built up to playing Halo 2 on the 360 online, because you could still play Halo 2 on that console, and got the wireless adapter, got the hookup, got the Xbox Live. For a split second during that era, and for a little while, the 360 was producing better graphics than what you could even get on PC at the time. PC eventually caught up and became the, you know, the master race, you know, that you have of people just swear buying PC. And I love PC as well. That's the thing. I'm on PC. I'm on consoles. Like, I play everything, right? I'm just a gamer that enjoys everything. And so when you take a look at everything and where it's going and how companies have gotten greedy, they've gotten comfortable with, you know, making similar games that are very similar. I mean, you have this recent Marathon game that Bungie is putting out, and it just looks very similar and you know, just stock to what we've seen before, right? So even Bungie has kind of fallen by the wayside, in my opinion. Now, Destiny 1 and 2, I know people love those games. I only played the first one. I can't speak for 2. I know it took them, you know, a little while to kind of figure out their footing for Destiny, and they finally seem to found it by Destiny 2, and that's great. But the problem is that the originality of some of these like newer games or newer IPs aren't that original. They're really just kind of reskinned or recycled, and you see the same thing with Ubisoft. You see the same thing with, you know, companies like EA. You know, it's very just stock and basic. So once we got out of the 360 and the PS3 era, and then we went right into your PS4 and Xbox One era, that's really where it started to take a dip, because we just started to get more and more remasters and remakes. Now, I love remakes as much as the next guy. As you see, I'm a Resident Evil fan, and I do love the Resident Evil remakes. but it's no surprise that the industry has leaned heavily on remakes and remasters because they are replicating or representing a time that is no longer here in gaming anymore. So they're going back to the cash cow. So they're going back to the gold mine to try to strike up some more gold to just, resell it. And, obviously some are just remasters. Some are rebuilt entirely from the ground up, like your Resident Evil 4 remake, right? So some games are beautiful in that regard because they can run a lot better. You even have this Oblivion remaster that's coming out. And again, people will complain, but a lot of people are going to buy it, right? So that's the thing, is that, like, even though people will kind of bitch about it, like how I'm bitching about it, and then I'll buy Resident Evil remake, 1 through whatever, it just shows that, like, we are kind of a victim of that nostalgia kind of mindset. And, it's harder when you get older because you're not looking at it from an innocent lens anymore. You're looking at it from, you have responsibilities, you have a job, you have relationships, you have, family. It's different when you're older because there's more responsibility. You're not looking at it from that, like, innocent mindset anymore. So when you're spending your money as you get older, and you can only maybe get a few games a year, especially now with how expensive games are, that's a huge thing. You know what I mean? Because you are taking advantage of the customers' wallets. And I know there's stuff like subscriptions, there's stuff like Game Pass and all that stuff, but just like Netflix and Amazon and, Hulu and everything else, YouTube TV, all the streaming shit, it all goes up eventually. And you're getting just completely taken advantage of by these services that you thought, oh, this would be a great replacement for cable. Let me go over here. All right, well, now you're just getting screwed. Or Game Pass, like, oh, this seems like a pretty good idea. I don't want to just, spend $60 to $70, sometimes $80 on games, depending on the edition that you're buying, right? Because there's $80 editions, there's $100 editions for games. You don't want to get ripped off. So if you get Game Pass Ultimate, okay, well, that's cool. And then you realize, wow, there's only a few games on this that I actually want to play, or some of these games are already cheaper or on sale. So it is definitely something that is very disheartening, because the thing is that they know that you're going to spend more money on the game later. A lot of them, because of the costumes, because of the microtransactions. We obviously see stuff like Fortnite having that model of just like, the passes and the skins and stuff like that. This isn't anything new to gaming. We've seen this for almost a decade now, if not more. All of this kind of build up, right? So it's not like this is something that, is a new thing to complain about, but it's something where, again, it's just them taking advantage of putting out a half-finished game, if not even barely finished, patching it later, and then just still taking money from you down the road. So something like Rockstar with, GTA, right? So GTA 6 is going to be coming out in late October. That's what it's, apparently slated for, right? Unless they delay it, I doubt it, because everything is pointing towards that actually coming out. All their financial reports, what they're expected to make, is leaning heavily on GTA 6. GTA is a great game. GTA, fantastic games throughout the years. I played Vice City all the time. I played 3 all the time. San Andreas. Even the originals, 1 and 2 on PS1, I rented them from the video store. Like, amazing memories. I love Red Dead Redemption, right? Stuff like that. I love Max Payne. All of those games from that era. I know Max Payne 1 and 2 were Remedy, published by Rockstar, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I was in that era of playing all that stuff as it was coming out. And now with GTA, if something like that can come out and say, yo, we're going to charge $100, that is just bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, that's absolutely bullshit. And even back in the day, and I understand, Nintendo had their magazines and the ads you can look at, and they were charging sometimes $80 to $90 for the games, but that was for different hardware. That was for the cartridge-based hardware. It was a little bit more expensive for them to, manufacture some of that stuff. And even if it wasn't, and they wanted to charge you an extra little bit for a premium, guess what? It's not 1995 anymore. It's not 1996 anymore. We're currently here in present day. Like, Nintendo is pretty much saying, if we think the game is supposed to be $80, it's going to be $80, right? And so you have to understand that Nintendo doesn't love you. These companies don't love you. They are out to make money. They are corporate entities that are making money. And we always know this. We know that that's what they're in for. But at the same time, everybody follows suit once one company does it. So the thing is that even with GTA 6 coming out, if that's $100, then what the hell is going to be, the next few years going to be, showing with some of these prices, with some of these games that might be taking longer to be made, or, companies that feel justified. Because the thing is that the quality has to be there. You can't charge $80 for a Switch 2 game, $90 physically if you want to get the physical copy, and give us a subpar game. Now, I know something like Donkey Kong, that's a little bit cheaper, right? Like, that's $70. But at the same time, it's just like, where is it? Where do we go from here? You know what I mean? It just shows you that some of these companies know they can get away with it slowly but surely. And not everybody's going to agree with this video, and that's fine. But at the same time, this is just me looking at it from that perspective. I understand this has happened before. I understand games were expensive back in the day, but we're not back in the day anymore. We're currently right here in 2025, and this is what the companies are doing. So I understand a lot of people look back at the history, and they look back and they compare it to now, but we're not back there anymore. We're right here. All we have is this moment right now, and we're looking at what these companies are doing right now, because honestly, the customer gets screwed over and over again. Now, someone like me, I'm going to get a Switch too. Absolutely. I want to play it. I'm a fan. Again, I buy these machines to play it so I can talk about them and experience them. But I could still call out the BS when I see it, especially if I play a game that is, $80 and it's not an $80 game. You know what I mean? So I think that's what you're going to start seeing is games already to this day, whether it's $60 or $70, aren't even worth that price. So what makes you think that now that they're $80 that they're suddenly going to be worth that price? Even GTA 6 being $100 doesn't mean that it's going to be worth that price because the game is the biggest GTA and it's all this stuff. It's like they know they're going to get money from you on GTA Online. They know all these other companies from all these other games like Fortnite, Call of Duty, they know they're going to get money on your skins and the map packs and everything else. So why even bother at making something more creative, more of a identity? You know what I mean? Have more of a unique presence in the gaming industry. Everything else is just repeated, same IPs, the same thing over and over again. And so you see that repetition and it just becomes such a bummer to deal with. And to be honest with you, it's very tiring. And this generation with the Xbox Series S, X, and the PS5, this is probably one of the worst generations that I've ever seen as far as how they handled the consoles. Obviously, I'm not counting the lockdown and how that was handled. I know that was out of their control, but how they actually promised, like on the Series X, Phil Spencer promising all of these things that it's going to run, it's going to be the most powerful machine, and it ends up, it runs games good, sure, some games, but not all of their games, not even their first-party games. Sony, same exact thing. They had the Concord failure, okay? Again, the consoles, they run decent. They run better than the PS4 and Xbox One, but we're not getting the quality of games within this almost 5 years of these consoles. This November will be 5 years since we've had the Xbox console and the PS5. So what are we doing? This generation is just completely sucked dry of original ideas, completely stuck in the mindset that they could just get away with it. They could fix it later. They could patch it later. They can add content in and just take your money slowly but surely. All these ideas, these remasters, these remakes, they're selling you on nostalgia. They're taking advantage of you and me. And we are guilty because we spend money on it. So, I'm not saying boycott it. I'm saying boycott it. No, I'm joking. But you get what I'm saying. It's just like there is basically no escape with how they've taken advantage of the customer, whether it's a gaming company, a streaming service, anything in general. It's just being able to, shrink some of these platforms down to just a few different companies, because that's eventually what's going to happen. I don't think a lot of these companies will be around in a certain amount of years. And if they are, then great. But maybe they'll start making some new original ideas. Now, you have some. You do have some that slip through the cracks. You know what I mean? And people enjoy them. And a lot of people like the From Software games. A lot of people like the Astrobot game that came out on PlayStation. So you still have these games that are delivering. And even Nintendo, they do deliver on their first-party games. Like I'm saying, it's still out there, few and far between. But if it is, we're going to be paying for it. That's for damn sure. So it's just the era of, us being in front of our CRTs, playing these classic games that just felt so refreshing, so new, so rewarding. A lot of replay value, a lot of unlockables. Sure, we didn't have achievements and trophies back in the day, but we didn't need them. It didn't matter. There was still just so much in the game that you could unlock, not just pay for to unlock. You had to play through it several times. Like, that was the fun of that. That was the fun. And that era is no longer here. It no longer exists. It's not here anymore. And I've accepted it. We've accepted it. But it's just, some people haven't. But I think when you look at it as a whole, it's definitely a distinct contrast from how it used to be. From how it used to deliver the gaming industry, how it used to deliver for its customers versus milking the customers dry. Oh, you want to buy The Last of Us, collection again? You want to buy it for the second time, the third time? You know what I mean? Like, that's not the Naughty Dog that was making Crash Bandicoot. I'm sorry. I love Last of Us 1 as much as the next guy. But, like, come on. It's a distinct difference from where it was. Same thing with Bungie. You know what I mean? Same thing with Activision. Same exact thing. Some companies just have lost it because they got so comfortable with ripping off the customers or kind of just being so either, like, high in their own mind that they just are like, no one can touch me. We're just going to do this weird, wacky idea and it will sell. And then it falls flat on its ass because some people have already moved on to the next game. So a lot of this discussion has been discussed before, but I just wanted to say, unfortunately, the gaming that we remember no longer exists, and we are in a really strange time right now with these gaming consoles, with these companies. I don't know what the future holds. Hopefully, we can just have some fun, play some games, and have a good time. I'm sure the Switch 2 will do that, but I think this isn't just about Nintendo. This isn't just about Rockstar. This is about the whole picture of things. So we'll keep playing what we can play, but all I know is that the last X amount of years, I've been going backwards and playing older games more than newer games. And that's just the damn truth. There's some companies like Capcom that still deliver. From Software, they still deliver. Rockstar, up until recently, were still really delivering quality games. I guess we'll see when GTA 6 comes out. But again, there's only a few companies left that I have full faith and trust in. Capcom is one of them because they're still at least trying to make new original ideas. Yeah, they go back to other IPs, but their IPs also grow to be more successful than ever. So they're doing something right. They're adapting the games right, but they also aren't afraid to bring old IPs back and make them even better or have new original ideas and concepts. And there's nothing wrong with that. So again, I don't know. This is just a video that I wanted to make and just kind of talk about. I had some stuff on my mind that I wanted to let you guys know. And let me know what you think of the gaming industry, how it used to be, how it is now, your thoughts on the future. And thank you for listening and hearing me rant a little bit and just kind of reminisce on a better time in gaming. And that better time is not right now. So hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch all of you in the next video. Take care.